Hello and welcome to Flash CS6. I'm Mr. Arsenault. Today we're going to do the tools required for Flash. So for starters, let's open up our applications folder. Scroll all the way up to Adobe, and you would like the red icon that says Adobe Flash CS6. There we are. I already have it open here. So I'm going to create a new ActionScript 3.0 file. And we'll move forward from here. Hopefully the echo is not too bad in this room, but this is what I have, so we're going to work with it. Alright, so in order to find the tools on the right hand side, we first have to paint something in. So I'm just going to take my paintbrush, make sure I have something that I can work with. Let's go high and sure. A little bit of everything. Okay, so the first tool is the selection tool. The selection tool will allow you to move objects, select objects, select layers, frames, as long as you click on them. So I clicked on my actual stroke. The stroke is what's in color. If I happen to click on the white, I cannot move my object. But what I can do is I can select it. If I click and drag, anything that's in my selection becomes movable. Now I can move it. If for whatever reason I click and drag part of it and I decide to move it, only part of it will move. Okay? Somewhat of a inconvenience if you're not doing things the right order. The next one is the sub-selection tool. We will not use that one in this class, so let's move on. The free transform tool. Free transform is much like the selection tool. However, when you make your selection around something, it also gives you handlebars. Handlebars allow you to change something in terms of its size. I can grab a corner one and increase it in both the X and Y axis. If I grab just the X axis one, which is actually vertically, okay, I can switch it to its reflective image, and same thing vice versa, vertically. Now what's nice about the free transform tool is as long as something's selected and within its boxes, it can overlap something and it won't affect it. But as soon as I deselect it, it becomes locked on to whatever else is behind it. So if I try to reselect it, I'll actually be selecting my high. And I don't particularly want that. So to undo that, I'm going to go into my edit menu, edit, undo move, and one more time, undo selection, edit. Now you notice that it has a little shortcut key right here, Command Z. So if I'm just going to redock this back in. If I press Command Z, I can keep backing up until the point is reached that I want to attain. There we go. The next one's a 3D tool. We're not going to touch that at all this class, but the lasso tool we'll definitely touch. Okay, so like I said, the free transform allows you to do a whole bunch of neat things. Shortcut key for that, by the way, if you hold your cursor over it, is Q. You can see it pops up in the little text box. If I choose my lasso tool, it essentially allows me to do the exact same thing, but I can make a curved selection. I can lasso something. Now this is important because not only is it highlighted and I can move it around, but if I don't have a square selection, like say I want to get my H, I can loop in here and not touch the top of my eye. And there, it's selected. If I want to manipulate the H, I'll just click on my transform tool and my free transform box appears around my H. Okay, so that's for round objects or objects that overlap. The next one is the pen tool. The pen tool is for making paths. Now for the introductory course, we're not actually going to be using the pen tool, so we'll just skip over that. That's more of a Photoshop technique. Next one is the text tool. Self-explanatory. You create yourself a nice text box. You start typing in there, hello world. And what you do is on the right hand side, you have your properties. If you have a basic layout looking like this, This is your library. Okay, if you scroll up to your windows that are on the right hand side, you have a Properties tab and a Library tab. Under the Properties tab, you will have all of your options. You actually have those for quite a few tools. But the first real important one is the pen tool, which you're not using, or the text tool. Now if I want to change my color, I couldn't just select the color and it'll change for me. What I have to first do is select it. And now if I change it to say green, it'll appear green. If I use my selection tool and I want to make this bigger, you'll notice that I cannot. I can make the text box bigger, but my actual text is locked in. What I need to do then is reselect my text tool, select my text, and increase the size. You can click and physically type in your number, font size, or you can drag it over and enlarge it that way. Letter spacing, that's kind of neat. You can space it out so it looks like you have a space between each letter, usually for titles. Font family and style, self-explanatory. And onwards we go. The line tool. Now if I'm going to play with the line tool, I'm going to first clear my stage. This white guy right here, well, let's take that off. This whole white space is called your stage. So to easily clear that, I'm going to select my selection tool, create a nice big box so everything will become highlighted. You know it's highlighted because it has little polka dots in it. And delete. That's a really fast way. The next is the line tool. Line tool will do a single pixel line. Now again with the properties, if you change the properties, the stroke, because the line tool only has a single property or only has a single pixel as its property, there's no actual fill for it because it's all outline. Stroke is another word for outline. So if I change that to my stroke size of 8, I could also change it here by dragging my cursor out. But numerically it goes a little quicker for me, so I'll go 8, enter, and I'll change my color to black. I like black. And I start drawing, say, a figure. Nice stick man. And I'm going to jump ahead and go right into the rectangle tool. Rectangle tool will create rectangles. Again, you have your fill and you have your stroke color. The stroke is denoted by a pencil. I still have it as 8, so it looks like a nice big box. Reason I changed this tool right away is because I want to click and hold and select my oval tool. I'm going to rechange my color to black, and that way I can draw myself a nice little head. Okay, now that I have a few options, let's go back to the line tool. Now the line tool has different styles, so I can change it to dashed, dotted, ragged, stippled, hatched, etc. But what I wanted to show you guys with the line tool is that if you use your selection tool and you click on an item, it splits it up into segments. Whereas if you did it with, say, the paintbrush, 1 segment, 2 segment, 3 segment, 4 segment, 5 segment, if I clicked onto anything, as long as it's connected, it's all going to highlight, which can be a little bit of a pain. So I'm going to press delete and erase that and show you guys why this is important. Well, in animation, we want to be able to move things around. So if I select his arm, say for instance, up to the elbow, and I want to rotate that, I could use my free transform tool. Now to blow it up or zoom in, there's 2 ways I can do that. I can do the magnifying glass right here. I can click in a number in my zoom pane up top, or the shortcut is Command plus, and the plus button is right beside your delete key. And now if I scroll over my dotted area, I have my cursor. And I can move it around if I wanted to, disconnect it, so I'll just reconnect it. Now what's cool about the transform tool is if I go over the corner of any of my handlebars, it has to be one of the 4 corners, I can rotate, so I can spin it around. Now by rotating it, my arm actually disconnects, and I don't really want that. So I'm going to edit undo. I'm going to Command Z and just undo a little bit more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my arm and anchor it so that it rotates on a different point. See this little white dot? That's the center. If I click and drag it down to, say, the very corner, I can now rotate it as if it's attached like an elbow. Kind of cool. If I decide to move my anchor point outside of my object and I rotate it, it would rotate around that point. Why you would use that? Probably if you had a larger object that doesn't rotate here, it rotates a lot further. But for me, I need it right there. So I'm just going to lock it down right there. And off we go. Kind of neat. Okay, same thing with the transformation tool. I'll just zoom out here. Command minus. Or again, zoom there, zoom there. If I want to make him bend, I would select him. I think I have most of his arm. Let's go a little further. Okay, and if I rotate it, he comes right off his body. Don't necessarily want that. So I'm going to take my anchor tool, put it at his hip, bend him over. And this way you can make him dance, you can make him move, and that's how animation works. Now, animation is actually not too bad, it's the creativity. If you can understand how the tools work, your creativity should take you miles and miles away. Moving forward. Okay, back to the oval tool. We can do ovals or rectangles. Rectangle primitive or oval primitive allows us to do subtractions from a rectangle or circles. I won't show you those because there's very little need for them. Instead, I'll show you the polystar tool. The polystar allows you to make polygons. Yay, polygons. Again, if you look in our properties panel, scroll down to tool settings and options, we can change from a polygon to a star. Okay. Make ourselves nice little stars. Or if you wanted to, change the number of sides, like say 3. A student of mine asked, how come there's no triangle? Well, this is how you create a triangle. And you can change your star point size. Star point size, I'll show you that in just a minute. Triangle. What I'll do is I'll go to yellow, because yellow is for a nice star. If I go to a star, doesn't look like much. But if you change the number of sides to, say, 10, you'll see a huge difference. You see the angles between each point? That's what the option does. Let's go back in. Number of sides 10, star point size. Let's put that at 0.25. So now when you make yourself a nice star, it comes out a little differently. Now if I change my stroke back to 1, 1 is a default setting. There we go. It looks like a nice bright star. Kind of neat. You can play around with that a little bit. Onwards to the next tool. So what I'll do is I will erase all of this. And because I'm doing a full sweep, I can just do Control A or Command A on the Mac and delete. My whole stage is empty. You notice that as you have an empty stage, your frame down here becomes empty as well. As soon as you start to fill it, that'll change as well. And scroll. There we go. Okay. Next one's a pen tool or pencil. It does a single stroke, single pixel, and it has a smoothing of 50. So if I do something somewhat circular, it'll try to round it out for me. If I do something regularly or roughly angled, it'll angle it out for me. So as long as I'm more or less even, it should provide a nice straight line for me. If you want to be really technical, you could just draw a whole bunch of lines and copy and paste. And that way you'd be sure to get exactly what you want, exactly how many times you want. Okay, the brush tool, I already showed you that at the very beginning. Very basic tool. You have your stroke, because it is just a stroke. What else do we have? We have the fill color. If I just draw around here. Yay! Can I change the stroke? I cannot change the stroke. Okay, so a student one asked me, how do I make it bigger? Well, you have two options. You have your brush shape at the very bottom, so you can change how you're drawing. Sometimes it makes a difference if you look like a highlighter or you want Japanese writing or a different effect. The other thing we can do is we can zoom out. So if I go to 50% and I keep drawing, and I go to 25%, and I keep drawing, you'll notice that my brush size stays the same, but because I'm at a different length or different distance from my stage, it actually draws more on. So if I zoom back in to 100, so I have 1, 2, and 3. So that's how you change your brush size. Okay, the next one we're going to do is the deco tool. Actually, I missed one. The brush tool. Brush tool allows you to do, well, spray can, little dots, depending on whatever color you have in there. Now right now it's doing little dots because that's its default. In a later option, I'll show you guys the library. If we can populate our library with objects or images, we can later input those images into our spray can. So I could have a rainbow and be spraying out rainbows. It would look kind of weird, but I could control that with my properties. There we go, see? No symbol, scale, default shape, scaling. I can do a lot of different things with that. The next one is the deco tool. Okay, so I'm gonna Command A, delete. Deco tool is very cool. Deco tool has preset animations for you. So right now it has a vine fill option selected. If you click, it'll just keep going indefinitely until it runs out of space. If you click again, it'll stop. Click over here, stop. Click, stop. Click, stop. Kind of neat. If you change it, you can have a building brush. Create yourself a nice skyscraper. City background. Advanced options. We can have random buildings, or we can have a set. And anytime we draw, we'll have the exact same one or the exact same set all the time. So I have gray and blue is skyscraper 1. And I'm sure if I change it to skyscraper 2, we'd have different colors. You get the idea. Now some of these are actually preset movie animations. So if I draw smoke, it will actually fill in smoke in my timeline. Okay? Now that'll come later because right now we're not working with different frames, we're working with a single frame. So I'm going to click back on one. And if you're interested, if I press play down here, it'll have smoke slowly disappear in the exact direction that my brush started at. Okay, so I'm going to delete these frames. Right click, remove frames. Missed one. Right click, remove frames. Okay, click on your frame 1 because that's what we're working with. And the next one is the bone tool. At this point, I'll take a short break because the bone tool is fairly advanced.